Hey there, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Crit Hit Interviews. I'm Arlyeon, and we're here today with Dave Gilbert of Wadjet Eye.
Oh,
Specifically, they're the developer of the Blackwell Saga, the Shiva, and more recently, Unavowed. If there's anything else you'd like to add to that list, feel free.
a lot. The Blackwell series, Emerald City Confidential, Gemini Rue, Primordia, Shardlight, Techno Babylon, a bunch of. Sorry.
I also did Gemini Rue and
Resonance.
Techno Babylon.
Yeah.
Oh, Resonance. That too.
13, 14 games out, something like that.
Yeah, on that note, you've also dabbled as a publisher for a number of other adventure games where some of these projects were collaborative, correct? Like Shardlight, I do believe.
Yeah, that was done by Francisco Gonzalez, and our art guy Ben Chandler did all the art for it, but it was programmed, written, and designed by Francisco, and I kind of oversaw the thing. I guess you'd call me a producer, where I just sort of oversee everything and make sure everything gets done is kind of what I do when I publish.
Okay. So, to kick off a lot of these interviews, I tend to like to talk a bit about you, the people behind the game, and in this case, I'll sort of start it off
Talk about myself.
I mean, isn't that what people love to do?
That's why we like being interviewed.
So, first off, what's your favorite game?
That is a loaded question, because every time I think I have a favorite game, then I go back and play it, and I realize I don't like it so much. Well, currently I'm playing through Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, and I'm liking it a lot. So that's my favorite game of the moment. I think those games are really well done, and so I'm having a lot of fun with them. So that is currently my favorite game.
That's a bunch of the Black Isle guys, isn't it? I believe is that studio.
I think it's Obsidian.
Yeah, Obsidian, but the Obsidian people are like the original Black Isle guys, if I'm not mistaken. They were like the Baldur's Gate guys.
They hired a bunch of the Black Isle guys. I don't know if Isle guys themselves. I do not remember.
So what got you into game development?
I've always been into these kind of games, these point-and-click adventure games, since I was a kid. And then one day, it's not the happiest story, but I live in New York City of 2001. So you know it went down. And I was between jobs at the time. And so I was kind of looking for something to get my mind off of things. And I discovered Adventure Game Studio. And I started making little adventure games in the engine on the website for free, and people would download them, and people seemed to like them. So I kept making them. I did about 4 or 5 freeware games. And then in 2006, I was between jobs again, and I had money saved up. So I decided, you know what, it's now or never, and just started. And 13 years later, something like that, I am still doing it. Excuse me.
No problem at all. So how accessible was the Adventure Studio tools?
I mean, it is geared. Was created specifically to make this kind of game. So it knows what you're trying to make already, and that's kind of very helpful. That's why I've kept using it for so long, is because it knows exactly what I'm trying to make and has the tools set to do that specific thing. So it's very accessible. You can do some very basic stuff right out of the box. You want to do stuff more complicated, you need to dig in a bit more. It's like any set of tools, really. It's it takes a lot of the grunt work out of the process.
Fair enough.
There's still a lot of work to do.
So what sort of skills has game development required you to put to use, and how and where did you develop them?
to writing. I've always loved writing. I was always a voracious reader as well as a writer, so I, consume a lot of stuff. I guess like the definitely the writing skills that I kind of developed over time, just in my regular endeavors from school or what have you. That's kind of where since I was always doing it for a long time, it enabled me to just sort of take it farther. And wait, hello?
I'm here. Well, hello?
Sorry, my screen just completely went black.
Oh.
That's weird. I don't know if I got disconnected or what.
No, I could still hear the entire thing there.
That's so strange. Okay. What was I saying? What sort of skills? Basically, you're saying what sort of skills did I have? Development?
What sort of skills did it require you to use and to gain, I guess, as you progressed as being a game dev?
When I first started, I guess the best way to put it is that I had been doing a lot of boring office jobs for many years, and I was kind of really sick of that. And game development was where I kind of was my pressure valve. It's where it was my hobby. It was a thing I did for fun. And so when I decided to do this, be unintentionally or not, I took some of that boring business stuff and just applied it to game development. I just sort of knew what I was capable of making, and I knew I couldn't overreach myself because you promise too much, you try to do too much, you end up not doing anything. And I sort of knew how to manage my time, maybe. I know that doesn't really sound exciting, but that probably is what really helped me get through the early difficult years, just sort of finding any way to make a game possible. And over time, I just sort of gained in terms of writing, in terms of narrative structure, in terms of where should I focus my efforts in terms of what is trying to get to the heart of the fun of the games that I do. That is the stuff that only comes with time. If you're making games, that skill isn't going to happen right away. You can have instincts, but there's a difference between having good instincts and really knowing a thing. So that just comes with time.
Fair enough. So you've worked... how to phrase this? So, Wadjet Eye isn't a solo act, per se. So how exactly did you meet your team?
Well, my team is mostly my wife and an artist named Ben Chandler. And I met my wife at the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco. And we just sort of kept in touch. She was from London. I was from New York. I occasionally went over there. We met up when I was there. We hit it off. We're married in Brooklyn and have a kid. But she was a game developer herself. And so when we got married, she started working with me, helping me with more of the technical stuff. She's more of an engineer programmer type of person. So she helped me out a lot with that. She did a lot of porting. She did a lot of, she helped a lot with that. That's kind of faded out as we've kind of done most of the ports for all of our games. So that's sort of faded out, and she's working on other projects now. But yeah, Ben I met on the AGS forum. He was an artist that I was impressed with, and we kept in touch for many years. And finally, one day I was in a position to hire someone full time, and I asked him, and he said yes.
Fair enough. So, game dev related things can just be fairly stressful. Do you have any hobbies that help you unwind?
Many new gray hairs on my head say yes. But that's the funny thing is that, game development was my hobby. To unwind from my job stress or life stress or whatever. And then I started doing game development full time, and it's been 12 years, and I haven't really found any new hobby exactly to help me unwind from that. I have gotten more into exercise and fitness and walking and stuff because, I'm getting older and this job is very sedentary, so that's important. So that helps me unwind. That keeps me on a very even keel is exercise. I read a lot. I make sure to take breaks. I try to enjoy my family as much as I can. So yeah, just the usual stuff. Not always successful at it, but try to find that balance.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a better job of it than I do, at least.
I don't know about that.
So,
I haven't checked my blood pressure in a couple of years. I probably should.
What led to your decision of becoming a publisher?
I'm actually not quite sure. I know that when I first started, oh my god, my screen went blank again. Are you hearing me?
Oh, I'm hearing you fine. You're just
freaking out every time that happens. This monitor is old. I probably need a new one. Anyway, yeah. So I realized early on that the games sold well enough. I could pay my bills and manage to keep going and have a somewhat decent lifestyle. But of course, I was living alone. I was single and I had this cheap apartment in the East Village. So I managed. That's the only reason why I managed. But I realized after a couple of years that if I had one flop, I was basically banking on every game being a reasonable success because that's how I earned my living. If I had one flop, I was done. There was no buffer. And I decided that it would be kind of neat to have works that weren't done by me to kind of spread out the risk. And so that's what I did. I started with Aaron Robinson's Puzzle Bots, and then we went on to Josh Nurnberger's Gemini Rue, and it's worked reasonably well. So I can go through these two different phases where I can be Mr. Creative and do my own thing and kind of create my own vision, but then I get burnt out and I can oversee someone else's project for a while, and that's fun. I can oversee something. I can probably see things that someone really close to the project couldn't, and that's really fun. But eventually I get sick of doing the management publishing thing, and I want to, and so I go back and forth, and I get the best of both worlds that way. So it's worked out pretty well.
So in regards to the publishing, have you typically been reaching out to people's projects that you found promising, or have they been reaching out to you?
Both. Gemini Rue and Gemini Rue and I believe Golden Wake, like they approached me. What other one? Like Primordia, I approached them. Resonance, I approached them. It different factors. It's usually, am I busy at the time? What's my timetable like? Do I feel like taking something on? Do I personally like it? Does it fit in our catalog? Does it sort of suit our wheelhouse? And what about the developer? What are they like? So there's no real rhyme or reason to how or why approach a certain game. It's just sort of a gut feeling. More times than not, my instincts have been proven good. Sometimes not so. But, there's no real rhyme or reason. I don't have any real plan. I never have.
So what sort of steps...
Shot today. I'm sorry. I had this really nasty sore throat that's making me sound like a frog.
I almost wanted to speak French right there, but anyway.
Oh, dude.
Hey, je suis français. I'm allowed. I mean, if I don't get to poke fun at my own French heritage, I mean... So, what sort of steps did you need to actually take in order to become a publisher?
Doesn't take much. You just... Would you like to make a game? I will pay you for it, and I will publish it. And they said yes, and then I became a publisher. So that was... There's really no steps. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason to what I do.
So, with that answer, that's sort of like, I guess, a nice little snapshot of the background. So, Unavowed...
No professional, didn't you?
It's honestly fine. It's a very endearing snapshot. But your recent project, Unavowed, is the release is right around the corner. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to sort of talk a bit about it and how it fits in with a lot of your past works.
Well, I don't see of it as something entirely new, more that, or rather, it's not something completely new, but it's kind of building on what's come before. I've always hated using this way to describe the game, but it's the only way I can describe it so people understand it. It's basically the Bioware narrative structure. You can choose your party, and they have your tactics and combat situations. It changes how you solve puzzles. They react to different things in different ways, and every time you bring out a new combination of characters, things play out differently. And so that is kind of what makes it different. But all like the narrative stuff there is there, the character stuff is there. Everything that you like from our previous games is all there. There's just a lot more of it. There's more branching. There's just more paths and kind of I guess you call it choice and consequence structure. There's a lot of that. So it's all the stuff that you love from but it's an adventure game. There's no combat or anything.
So wait, since there's different characters, so picking party members does in fact have a significant choice. It's not just flavor. They have different skill sets, sort of dialogue paths, personalities. Does this mean you could intentionally make the game hard by picking like a party that's essentially dysfunctional with each other?
So that would not happen. I have designed each mission of the game 5 different ways.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a reason why this game has taken 3 years. I've designed it 5 different ways so you can take advantage of the 5 different party combinations, and each of the characters react in different ways. They each approach and look at the world from different places. So I want each different combination of characters to be very rewarding. That's one of my favorite things about those Bioware style RPGs. I play through one mission and I think, wow, what would have happened if I brought that other character? I imagine they would have had something interesting to say about this or what have you. And it's that experience distilled into Unavowed. Like I made that the core of the experience is, the choosing your party and seeing how they react to things is kind of what I was going for.
So how strongly built is like the inter-character dynamics? Part of when I mentioned the dysfunction was not necessarily mechanically, but whether party members themselves clash. So I was curious as to like how interpersonal character development is.
That's an interesting thing that you bring up, because when I thought about how do I write these characters interacting with each other, it is so easy and maybe slightly lazy to go for the arguments, to go for the snark, to have them insult each other. And it's so easy to do that. Oh, they're bantering. No, they're not bantering. They're just insulting each other. And I found that when I watch, I'm a bit, this sounds slightly like a tangent, but it's not. Cheap date when it comes to the CW superhero shows, the Arrowverse. I love that stuff, even though it's like total trash. But what I love about it is that the characters just genuinely like each other. And seeing that play out is just fun. And I found that I did in why people like each other versus why they don't. And so the one thing I'm trying to do with Unavowed is to show this group coming together as a team and just showing them in common ground with each other over the course of the game. And that's something that's very important. So you're not going to have characters who are dysfunctional. No characters hate each other. It's more about seeing how they learn about each other and form as a team.
So it's altogether a more positive focus on character interaction rather than like...
I'd like to think so. Like if you watch a series like, I don't know, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something, it's like Guilty. By the end of that show, these characters are really tight. That's why you enjoy seeing them interact. It's because they have relationships and pasts, and they're a team, and you can see that form. And that's something I've been trying to do with Unavowed.
By the way, you said there was 5 different team compositions. How many characters are there in total?
to the main character, the player character, who can be male or female and have 3 different origin stories. So there's all that as well. There are 4 companion characters, but there's 2 of them that, or one of them have to be in the party at all times, because otherwise the number of party combinations would have increased by a lot, and it was just too much. So I lowered it to 2 members of the group that are the veterans and basically are the knowledge keepers. They're the ones who know things. So when you heard, one of them needs to be on hand to talk to you about what that is. So there's 4 party members, possible party members. You can bring 2 of them at any time. So there's a total combination of 5.
Hefty. I honestly am looking forward to seeing like the different skill sets available to them, because I mean, honestly, if you're familiar with like the Bioware formula, then I'm typically a charisma player. I try and talk my way out of everything.
Fun. Then you want to be the bartender, because then the bartender origin is the one who tries to empathize with all the characters.
So, also, definitely interesting, by the way, just on the multiple origin thing, because that's not something you see a lot in adventure games.
I know it's been done in Dragon Age Origins, which is where I totally stole it from, but it's never been done in an adventure game as far as I know.
So on that note, what was your inspiration for making this game, and just how did it come to be?
Well, I guess actually what inspired the mechanics of it was actually an interview by Jennifer Hepler, a former Bioware writer who had this very infamous interview, which she got a lot of undeserved flack for. This interview where she said that she wanted to skip the combat sections so she could get to the narrative stuff. And she got a lot of undeserved flack for that, as I said. But hello, can you still hear me?
Oh, I can still hear you. I'm currently just thinking of like blackguards.
Screen just went black for just like a disturbingly long time. Okay, sorry. She noted that in a lot of combat-oriented games, you can skip the cutscenes, you can skip the narrative and get back into the combat. Why can't you do the reverse? And I thought that is a wonderful idea. That is the point-and-click adventure game of my dreams, basically. The Bioware game, the Bioware narrative stuff, but without the fighting and the shooting. That sounds great. So I wanted to do that for a very long time, but I never really knew what. Was this going to be a space adventure? Was this going to be a fantasy? Was it going to be what? But I've always been very into urban fantasy stories. I'm a huge Dresden Files fan. I'm big into Hellblazer and World of Darkness and those kind of things. And of course, the Blackwell series was also urban fantasy. And since I had success with that, with Blackwell, I decided to just sort of return to the well, as it were, and just build on that with Unavowed. Like, I know I love urban fantasy. Let's just go nuts with it and just see what we can come up with, in this, using this party-based mechanic that I decided I wanted to use. So, yeah, that's kind of how it got inspired and slowly grew from there.
I find it hilarious, too, because I'm currently playing, like, this tactical RPG, but its combat is so unforgiving, and you can literally put yourself in basically no-win situations that there's sometimes where I'm like, I really wish I could skip this, or I could have a save or like a recovery point between these 3 back-to-back fights.
I guess the narrative stuff must be interesting if you want to skip it.
The narrative stuff is what I'm sticking around for. It's like the combat is okay and sort of interesting, but I'm more curious because it's following like a group of sort of morally questionable people who are maybe doing what's right in a grander sense of things. Wait,
now I want to know what game this is.
Blackguards.
Okay, I have not heard of it. I'll have to look that one up.
I mean, the joke would be a dwarven arsonist, a rake, and a possible murderer walk into a bar, and then the bar burns down because the dwarf.
game.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 in 1 DLC. Okay, I have never heard of it. I'll have to check this out someday.
But yeah, no, there's definitely like I really enjoy narrative games. I really enjoy urban fantasy too, because like I'm familiar with Hellblazer, with the character of like Constantine. I really do wish there was things that sort of followed that sort of funny, clever, but it's like there's a very big horror element there, and I would love to see games tackle that combination of horror and tongue in cheek.
Be in my wheelhouse so much. What I do like about the urban fantasy genre, and I sort of touched on this with Blackwell, is that you can tell like real human stories, but adding that supernatural fantasy sci-fi element to it just lets you take it that much farther. You can kind of just experiment with, you know, ification of anxieties, you know, that kind of stuff. And since it's a partial real world setting, you can kind of really go nuts with it, and that's what I enjoy about the genre.
I'm trying to remember it. The demon that is the dude's drinking issue basically manifest.
In Blackwell, yeah, and everyone thought it was an actual literal demon, and I really regret not making that clear.
Which, on the note of Blackwell, like, does the world of Unavowed take place in the same world as the saga? Because I remember.
It does.
So, is there any notable references you'd care to mention then?
Them very, very subtle. There's some minor characters that you'll see. I've posted them on Twitter, so it's not like I haven't spoiled this already. There's a few characters from Blackwell Epiphany. You see, there was a police officer on Blackwell Epiphany called Corey Palmer, who is in Unavowed. There's some references to Blackwell. There is one small character in Blackwell Epiphany becomes a major character, actually sort of a party member in Unavowed. I won't tell you who it is, but I think the longtime fans are going to get a big kick out of that. I'm really looking forward to the reactions. But yeah, you don't have to have played Blackwell to understand it. I've made a big point of that because, you know, the whole point of a new IP is you want to reach a new audience. So I don't want to tie it down to Blackwell, but it is a big part of my and my company's history. So I want to acknowledge that it exists.
All right. So what was the hardest challenge when making this game? First in like a mechanical sense, and I guess secondly in a narrative sense.
There's actually, I have answers for both of those things. Mechanically, it's because I was making a game about, you know, choices and different party members and the choices you make for your party members. I had to learn organize data and variables and how to like not just store it but retrieve it. There are all sorts of things that I had to keep track of. Like, did you bring this character on this mission? And what choice did you make in that mission? And now this character has to react to that choice one way if he was there and another way if he wasn't. And so that alone has like so many different permutations. I had to be very, very clever about how I organized all of that. And so that took a lot of learning a lot of new skills for the first time. So there was that. And also just the sheer amount of time that it took to design. It was just a very frustrating because I was used to designing a lot faster. Like once I finish a section, I'm done. But no, I had to go back and redesign it 4 other different ways because I had to all the different party combinations, and then I had to test all of them. And so I sort of underestimated how much work there would be when it came to testing, because it's like there's no way I can test for every single combination of choices. It's just impossible. Like if you chose one origin and then brought this one character on this one mission, but did that mission second instead of third, then at this point of the game, character is invisible. You know, it's these very specific things that there is no way I could find them all on my own. So I've been testing it a lot and trying to fix all of them. So that's been fun. Narrative-wise, it's a little more esoteric and a little existential and weird. But when I was working on Blackwell, I really took it for granted that how well I knew the main characters. Like I was really close to Rosa and Joey, and I could write their dialogue in my sleep. I was very familiar with these two characters. And so when I started a new game, and suddenly I had all these new characters to write for, it just wasn't coming the same way that it did for Blackwell. And I kind of had to regain I had to kind of form those relationships with the characters all over again. And that was a bit of a narrative challenge for me because taken for granted, and suddenly that was gone. So I had to kind of get that back. And that was kind of fun. Now I really like these characters.
So, is there anything that didn't make it into the game that you really wanted? And again, like mechanically or narrative wise, since they're both.
There was originally another companion character. There were going to be 5 altogether. And originally I wanted you to be able to take any combination of characters. So it was like 10 different combinations, or maybe 12 or 11. I can't do the math in my head. But that was just too much. And then I just kept paring it down till I got to the 5 that I have now. So that I'm only one person, so I regret not being able to, do as much as I wanted. It was just impossible. It was too much work. And there was also a mission that I had to cut, having to cut for time because the game was just taking too long to make. So that I didn't. But anything else? Not really. Pretty much this is the game of my dreams, and for the most part, it's got everything I wanted.
So did you have any favorite memory of the game so far, either from beta testing or having someone like run through any build of it?
Keep that question. I lost you for a second.
Do you have a favorite memory of either playing through this game for testing or watching someone else sort of play through it for testing purposes?
I mean, I demoed the game at Play NYC last year, and watching people play through the origin stories and seeing, because something violent happens at the end of each one. So, was just great. It's like that moment when you know that you've done the right thing and you have them and they're interested. That was a great memory. Just seeing, because when you're so close to something, you just never know if something's working. And that was the first confirmation I had that this was working, and that was a great feeling.
So, you've mentioned a few things have been paired off. I'm curious if there actually is going to be, like, post-release, any content updates or features you may be considering implementing.
I mean, one thing I toyed with doing, since this game is so long and there's so many characters, and it's something that, like, stories that could be told in this world, and I toyed with the idea of maybe doing like small one-off missions, specifically with some of the characters that never really get a chance to interact with each other on Unavowed. So doing that, making smaller games after this game is done, just as a way to kind of, and a little bit, I don't know. It's a pie in the sky thought, and I might not do it, or I might do it. I don't know. I never really have any plan. But that's something I'm considering.
Would the character that you had originally sort of plotted as one of the companion characters but cut, would they have been one of the ones that would have gotten a side mission? And would you care to mention what the character concept would have been?
It's not really a horrible secret. It was a muse, a muse named Calliope, who partially lost her power, and her ability is that she could look at any creative object, any creative work, any work of art, and be able to tell you what went into making it. Like, she could see some graffiti on a wall and tell you what the thought process was in creating it. And so it's a little esoteric, but it was kind of a neat idea. Is saying, oh, this person's like in anguish because his considering leaving him, so he drew this picture, and you could find out things through her knowledge, and I found that particularly interesting. But in the end, as I was kind of hashing out puzzles and designs for each of the characters. Hers was the one that I had the most trouble designing for, and when I decided that I needed to cut one of them, there was no contest. It was her. She was gone. But she is in the game. She's just not a companion character.
I mean, it's an interesting ability because that means like if someone was posting up like graffiti with political or subversive purposes, she would straight up know.
And it's an interesting power, and there's a lot you could do with it, but I was having it since it's so broad, I found it very hard to actually design for, and it turned out I didn't have to. So that worked out well. Yes.
So beyond Unavowed, are there any other new projects planned on the horizon?
We are in the beginning stages of a sequel to Techno Babylon.
Oh.
And that is being done in the third dimension. It's being done in Unity with 3D graphics. So that's coming out. It's something very new and a little scary for me personally, because I know nothing about the technology. So for the first time, the developer is working on something that I cannot touch, and I don't know how it works. So it's kind of scary for me. But that's cool. I love Techno Babylon. So any Techno Babylon is good Techno Babylon as far as I'm concerned. So there's that. There's another that kind of in the beginning talks over, but nothing I can really talk about yet because nothing's been decided. And in terms of me, I am trying to think of where I want to go next. I'm deciding whether or not I want to stick with these point-and-click adventure games because I've been doing them for so long, and this game Unavowed in particular has taken so long that I think I need to maybe try something new. I don't know. I haven't quite decided yet what I want to go after this. So, but those are kind of what we've got in the works and what we're thinking about.
So, is there anything you want to share with the audience or words you may have for aspiring devs?
I never know what to tell people because, excuse me, people ask, "Oh, how do you get into indie game development?" And I just need to take a sip of water. I'm sorry. As I said, I have a really sore throat.
No worries. You needn't apologize.
Because all of the knowledge and skills that I had to gain to make it are 12 years out of date. The market 12 years ago is very different from the market now. I will say that the smartest thing I ever did was start really, really small and organically grow to the point where we are reasonably stable now. We are like solid foundation because we grew very organically. We didn't try to go beyond our reach or what have you. So that is the only advice I can give to indie devs. How to market and sell your game, that's not really something I have any knowledge about because just 12 years out of date.
So, lastly, and this is a question I tend to ask everyone as we wind things down, are there any indie projects that you personally would like to share with the audience?
Oh, I haven't really, aside from Pillars, I haven't really played a new game in ages. Oh my God, I'm like, every indie out there is like, dude, come on. I'm really just trying to think of, I guess, you know what I really liked? A recent game that I played was a sequel to a game called The Fall.
Oh, I played the first one, not the second yet.
Yeah, the second is really good. Although the sequel is called Unbound, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I really, really enjoyed it. I really, really like the series a lot. So I know the third one is supposedly happening at some point. So yeah, that I recommend.
Okay, spoilers. I now know it's a trilogy.
Assume it's a trilogy. I don't know. There could be 4 of them, but
I mean, I was wondering if it was going to end at the second one or not, but okay. So there's more.
But
to come.
they've announced that I knew going in.
I didn't.
Sorry.
It is quite fine. Do you have any other final words, though, just for the interviewer at large?
I always, I have to end by saying thank you to everyone listening because, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. You've enabled me to kind of earn my livelihood and support my family on these little games, and I am forever thankful for that.
And I guess I'll join in on that sentiment of thanks to the viewers just for chiming in. It's awesome to have folks willing to come in to see my content, and also awesome for people just interested in like the indie genre of gaming and supporting the less giant mammoths of industry. I also would like to actually toss out a really major thank you to you, Dave, just for taking the time out of your schedule to give someone small like me time to answer my questions.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Also, thank you to your wife, since she was, I believe, the one who first answered my queries.
Not my wife. She's I think you sent the email to the PR email address. So yeah, she's the PR manager, not my wife. Don't want to get into trouble.
Hey editor, please edit that.
Don't get me into trouble, man.
And before they just like leave that in there, just be like, way to go. But altogether, you can buy and wishlist Unavowed, The Blackwell Conspiracy, and a bunch of his other titles on Steam. If you're having trouble finding them, just search up.
It's my pinned tweet on Twitter. So if you look at my Twitter feed, Wadjet Eye Games, you'll see the pinned tweet is the link to the wish list. So
and
gotta work those algorithms, man.
True. There will be links to his Twitter in the description, as well as to the official website for Wadjet Eye. Is there anywhere else you'd actually like to send people other than the Twitter, the Unavowed Steam page, and your official website? Chirp, chirp, tumbleweed.
Right? Hello?
Hello? Sorry, did your screen go black again?
Did you not hear me?
No.
You didn't hear me, I guess. No, I said it was fine.
Oh, okay. Editor, also get rid of that awkward pause. Oh, God. But yeah, altogether then, thank you. It was actually really neat to find out more about Unavowed, and also totally awesome to find out about Techno Babylon 2. Wahaha.
Secret about it, so it's not like a earth-shattering revelation.
Hey, I didn't know about it, so I mean,
we haven't like formally announced it, but we're, if you look at James Dearden's Twitter account, like he's posting stuff all the time.
I follow you, and I think maybe 100 other people, and most of them are TTRPG people. I'm a huge tabletop nerd, but with all that said and done, then for those viewing, again, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this comment, feel free to like, comment, and if you'd like to see more of this, subscribe. And remember, sharing is probably the best way to show that you care about this channel, to get it to new audiences who will probably boo me. Thinking positive there, me. Thinking positive.
Okay.
I'll catch you folks next time.